And hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I hope everybody had a great end to 2023 and your 2024 is off to a great start. 2023 was a bit of a crazy year for me between becoming an author, easing into my role of being a husband, becoming a father to a beautiful baby girl, losing my mother. It was just a whirlwind of emotions and all these big life-changing moments that went on for me. So my hope for 2024 is that things settle down a little bit and I'm able to kind of relax and get into a routine, because last year was kind of crazy. But have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to try and skim over as much as possible and cover as much ground as possible. Do want to do end of the year awards for professional wrestling, give you guys an idea of what's upcoming in this channel, while also previewing a couple of wrestling shows. I won't do a full in-depth review of World's End because I feel like that show's already come and gone, and my going match by match would just be a waste of time at this point. I did eventually see it. I thought the show was okay. I got a phone call from a friend right after it was over, and he told me that show, quote, was a piece of shit. One of the worst shows he's ever seen. I don't know if he was just trying to set my expectations or something, but I didn't think it was that bad. I personally thought Wrestle Dream was worse as far as AEW shows goes. It was just kind of like, I think AEW, the oversaturation is really getting to them, where it's just too many pay-per-views. They've got too many shows, too many pay-per-views, too many titles, and it's hard to get excited about it when you're having that much content thrown in your face all the time. And things like the Jericho situation didn't help, made things a little awkward. Now, I'm not going to comment on that beyond this last comment I just made. I'm not going to cast aspersions on anybody involved. I'm not going to state that I know exactly what happened, because I don't. I'm also not a detective, so it's not my job to find out what happened. It's just another awkward situation for AEW at a time where they really, really didn't need it. Keith Lee dropping out of the show last minute, also not ideal. A bit of a rough situation for them, but they did the reveal of the Devil storyline, which wasn't bad. I think a lot of people probably thought it was Adam Cole under the mask, so I don't think it was a huge surprise, but it made sense. At least it kind of reminded me of, people have been making comparisons to the Higher Power, Vince being the one under the hood. I kind of compare this to when Undertaker and Kane were conspiring with each other in 1998, and for weeks and weeks they built up, are they working together? Are they working together? Are they working together? And they got to a point where they just dropped so many hints and made it so obvious that they were working together that they just had to have them come out on Raw and basically say, yeah, we're working together. Because it was almost like, I don't know what the original plan was, but if it wasn't to have them work together, the things they did on TV made it so obvious that they were working together that they almost had to go in that direction. So I kind of feel like that's where we were with the Devil storyline. It's like, if you don't have a major surprise, then it almost has to be Adam Cole for it to make sense and for it to work well. So I was okay with that, and we'll see where it goes moving forward. I'm also not going to comment on MJF being removed from AEW's roster page, because that, MJF has a habit of working us, so I'm not going to comment on it until we have something official that he really is gone. So we'll just have to wait and see for that. I don't know if Samoa Joe is the guy I would have gone with to have it beat him for the title. Honestly, it would have been great if it was Wardlow, but they did so much damage to him that they've got him back to being a thug in a group. It's because Wardlow at one time was one of the most over guys in AEW, and they just squashed him into oblivion and ruined him. And it's like, man, what'd you have to go and do that for? But in any case, World's End to a bit of a messy year for AEW, and here's hoping next year is a lot better. I would severely cut down on the pay-per-view schedule and various other things. I think a lot of AEW's creative problems could be fixed by just lessening, just less is more, and appealing to that mindset, but they don't seem willing to do that, so who knows. But what else? Well, since 2023 is over, I wanted to get this out before the new year, but I had technical issues that got in the way. So you're going to get my 2023 end of the year awards now. I'll try and go through these as much as possible. It's 6 categories under the best and 6 categories under the worst. So let's go with the negative first. Let's start with the worst. Worst show of the year, worst big show like pay-per-view or premium live events or whatever WWE calls them now. My pick is NWA's Halloween show, Samhain, or whatever, however you pronounce that. Freaking horrible show. I think I'm one of 10 people that watched it, but man, it was bad from start to finish. I wanted to give the NWA a new chance after they put the belt on EC3, and I watched them like, wow, that was one of the worst pay-per-views I've ever seen, so not going back. It was really, really bad, and they did a spot on the show, the infamous Father James Mitchell cocaine spot, that appears to have cost them their TV deal with the CW, so, yeah, so not only was the show really, really bad, it also did business damage to them for their television opportunities, which is maddening. Worst match of the year? I've got two options for this. It's either Jeff Hardy and Jeff Jarrett in that stupid Texas Chainsaw Massacre match on Dynamite, or MJF versus Shane McMahon and Snoop Dogg at WrestleMania 39, that fiasco. I mean, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre match was at least for charity, so at least some good came out of it, I guess. And the WrestleMania match was, largely bad because of the injury to Shane McMahon, just kind of derailed it and turned it into a complete train wreck, so it's hard to say which one was worse. I typically in situations like this, I go with the match that was longer and extended my pain, so I'll go with Jeff Hardy and Jeff Jarrett as the worst match of the year, because that was some of the worst television AEW's ever produced. That was really, really bad. Worst moment of the year, I'm going to give that to the Brawl Out Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, which the situation with CM Punk and his backstage kerfluffle with Jack Perry that completely overshadowed what was supposed to be the biggest night in AEW history and should have been a home run and a big accomplishment for them, and all anybody was talking about the next day was CM Punk and Jack Perry, and it's like, oh my god, they just can't get out of their own way. Something always has to happen to derail any kind of positive momentum they have going. Worst tag team of the year. There weren't a lot of options here. There were no really bad tag teams that stood out to me, so I'm going to go with a makeshift tag team that briefly won the tag titles in WWE. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso, two guys I like, two guys that are among the better baby faces in WWE right now, but putting them together just didn't quite click, and it didn't help that their tag team finisher, they just couldn't hit that thing right. So the fact that that team was short-lived, I think is probably for the best. They were not a very good run for either one of them. Unfortunately, it was cut off short. It was a short enough run where it didn't do any kind of lasting damage to either one of them. Worst women's wrestler of the year, I've got two options, both of them from WWE. The now apparently retired Lacey Evans, who doesn't seem all that interested in going back to WWE, just never caught on. And they tried to repackage her and do something different with her, and it just, once again, just did not work. So they cut their losses and let her go. And Ronda Rousey, who at one time was a really big star-level attraction in WWE, main evented WrestleMania and got women into the main event of WrestleMania largely through her star power. And here she is in a terrible tag team run with Shayna Baszler. Her matches aren't very good. The feud with Baszler wasn't very good. Everything about her, she regressed horribly from where she was originally. And it was probably best that run ended too, because I think all the positives that they got out of Ronda Rousey they could have possibly gotten out of this point, because she just was not delivering at this stage of her career. And the worst male wrestler of the year, I'm going to give to the former Jungle Boy, Jack Perry. Let's look at the year that Jack Perry had, okay? He was involved in the Four Pillars feud in AEW, where it was clear to me that he was the weakest of the four. I went into that match and that feud thing, like, man, there's a reason why MJF got the belt out of these four, because the rest of them can't really talk all that well. And when you look at the four supposed pillars, MJF, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Jungle Boy Jack Perry, it's like, okay, MJF, we all know all of his positives and how great he is. Darby Allin is a very unique in-ring talent and very his own, like, kind of X-Factory charisma to him. Can't talk real well, but everything else is pretty good. So he's probably number 2 on that list. Sammy Guevara, his big problem is that he's built to be a heel, like, because he's got the most punchable face in the history of professional wrestling. He reminds me of like a Buff Bagwell in that sense, where he's just got this face where you want to punch him. He looks obnoxious. It reminds me of when Tony Romo was quarterbacking for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm like, God, I hate him. He looks so punchable, and Sammy has that face. But then you watch him work, and he works like a baby face, because he does all these high-flying moves and everything, and he hasn't quite been able to make the two work for him as well. Maybe earlier on when he was getting hit by golf carts and doing stuff like that was kind of great for him, but it's like they want to run with him as a babyface, but he's not very likable. And whenever they try to run with him as a heel, his matches are too spectacular to really boo him. So he just hasn't found the right pathway. He's got tools, but he hasn't found the right way to use them yet. So he's probably number 3 on that list. Jungle Boy Jack Perry is such an obvious number 4 that it's almost like he doesn't belong in the ring with the other 3. It was, and that feud and that match really highlighted that. And then they turned him heel, break away from the Jungle Boy thing, and it was a heel turn that didn't really do a whole lot for anybody. Got into a feud with Hook that didn't do a whole lot for anybody. The match they had was okay, but then he caused a situation that led to the top draw in AEW leaving the company and heading back to WWE with smiles on his face. And it's like, with nothing to show for it. It's like, all right, so Jack Perry basically was the catalyst for delivering a huge black eye to AEW, and that is very, very bad. Personally, I would have let him go too. If they're going to let Punk go, I'd have let him go too, because what are you losing at this point? What value does Jack Perry bring? Oh, he wants to get slammed on real glass. Well, I hope it was worth it, buddy, because it was... ended up being the biggest black eye in company history, the biggest black eye on a night where it should have been the biggest night in AEW history, and Jack Perry was kind of the catalyst for that. Now, Punk has his own problems, where even in WWE, I'm kind of waiting for somebody to piss him off and send him off the deep end again. Punk has his own issues, but Jack Perry, being who he is, didn't help the situation all that much, and took a bad situation, made it even worse. And so he is my pick for worst wrestler of the year. And it's funny, he's been off TV ever since all that happened, and nobody seems to miss him. And there you go. They could announce that he's gone tomorrow, and I don't think anybody would be that upset about it. So his stock has dropped considerably from where he started. So those are all my worst of awards. Let's do some of the best of awards. Best show of the year, best pay-per-view, best premium live event, whatever they're called. I've got 2 options. One is WrestleMania 39, which I thought was a absolutely terrific show. 2 nights of great WWE wrestling until the finish of the main event. So everything was great up until the finish of the main event. It kind of sucked the life out of it a little bit, but other than that, terrific show. When you look at all the big grudge matches, the tag title match on night 1, Ray versus Dom, a lot of good things that they were able to accomplish on this show. The IC title 3-way was spectacular. Very enjoyable WrestleMania. And I said in my video review, I was fully prepared to come on here and say it was the best WrestleMania in 20 years. And then the main event happened and it kind of soured me a little bit. But, it's still a terrific show. And then you have a similar situation AEW with All In. They had the biggest show they've ever had, big stadium show in London, huge success. I thought the show came off really, really well, very well put together show. And then the brawl out happened and dominates all the discussions about that show. So you had 2 shows that were marred by, one by a stupid booking decision, and 2, the second one was marred by a backstage nonsense that should have never happened. So, which show was the better one out of those 2? I'd probably lean towards WrestleMania, but I think both shows were very, very good. And it's unfortunate that, stuff that there were things that could have been avoided to keep kind of the dark cloud away from both of those shows, and unfortunately they weren't avoided. So, unfortunate, because I thought both shows were stellar, other than the 2 major issues plaguing them, but them's the breaks. My match of the year, I am going to give it to the main event of All In, Adam Cole versus MJF at All In. Now, a lot of people I've seen for match of the year, they're talking about the Omega Ospreay matches. I've seen a lot of people give the tag title match at WrestleMania 39. I've seen some people give it to a couple of the big women's matches this year, namely Becky and Trish in the Steel Cage match, which was great. I personally would give it to Cody and Roman at WrestleMania, which I thought was an absolutely terrific match up until the finish, which kind of sucked the life out of it. There's also MJF and Danielson in the Iron Man match, another one that's getting a lot of praise and high on a lot of people's best of lists. Terrific Iron Man match, one of the better Iron Man matches I've ever seen. But when I think of the stories that were being told in ring and having me hooked from start to finish, no match had me hooked quite as much as Adam Cole and MJF. The storyline that they had with their friendship and whether or not they were going to be able to stay friends after the match. Of course, now we have the payoff to that with the reveal of the Devil storyline, but for that night, I was hooked. I was completely invested, hook, line, and sinker, invested in everything they did, and I thought the match came off tremendously well, and I was very happy with the final result. So that's my match of the year, personally, and it should have been a great capstone to a great event from AEW, but then Punk and Jack Perry had to get into a fight backstage and ruin the whole thing. So, very unfortunate. But best moment of the year, I said the worst moment was the Brawl Out. I guess the best moment by default is kind of CM Punk's return to WWE, which caught the wrestling industry by storm. And it's like, man, this CM Punk is a lightning rod that generates interest no matter where he goes. And I have my misgivings of how they've handled Punk since he first came in. I think having him come in and being the nice guy that's all smiles and saying he's home feels insincere given how he left the company, but in any case, like, the initial return was very shocking and a huge major headline getter, especially considering how his run in AEW ended so unceremoniously. So it's unfortunate for AEW, very fortunate for WWE, and very exciting and interesting to all of us fans. So we'll just have to wait and see what 2024 has in store for CM Punk. I think it's safe to say he's going to get a WrestleMania title shot. We'll see if he gets the main event night 1 or night 2. I'm pretty sure that's a given at this point, but we shall see. All right, and tag team of the year. Two options, FTR and the Usos. These two teams have been two of the best teams around for the last couple of years now. The Usos split up, and now Jimmy and Jay are off doing their own things. Jimmy wound up kind of getting shortchanged by betraying the bloodline and then getting back into the bloodline inexplicably. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense and only contributed to the further devaluing of the bloodline as an entity and as a storyline, and my intrigue in it has lessened. Jay, on the other hand, has gone over to Monday Night Raw, has become one of the most beloved baby faces on the show, and seems to be doing really well. But their tag team run, this was kind of the last gasp of their tag team run, and they did some very, very good stuff, mainly the WrestleMania match and the Bloodline Civil War match, both of which were very good. But if we're talking consistency throughout the entire year, I'm going to give that to FTR, who consistently have the best matches. That 2 out of 3 Falls match they had on Collision is one of the better AEW matches this year, and typically when you put them in the ring with any tag team, they can give you something at least pretty good and at most excellent, some of the best matches on the show. FTR continues to be a very a high-value presence in AEW, and God, they need them now because AEW is kind of struggling. So FTR is going to get my tag team of the year. Women's wrestler of the year, I'm going to give it to Rhea Ripley by default. Not that a lot of other women had bad years, but Rhea they elevated her to like superstar status with the win at WrestleMania and various other things. She's such a major fixture of the show that it feels like nobody else really kind of is in her league, both in WWE or AEW or anywhere else. Now, I don't watch Stardom. I've heard many things about Julia, and Mariah May came into AEW with a lot of hype. We'll see if she's deserving of that hype, and I think Toni Storm's doing really well for herself in AEW, kind of a fresh coat of paint for that division that they desperately needed. But as far as like being a ruling presence on the show, I think Rhea Ripley is far and away like the most the biggest star in women's wrestling right now. So for Women's Wrestler of the Year, I'm going to give it to Rhea Ripley. Will she continue that in 2024? We'll just have to wait and see. And then my Male Wrestler of the Year, I've got 3 options. It's either MJF, who completely carried AEW on his back and continued to deliver over and over and over again, no matter what. Cody Rhodes, who has a couple of pitfalls, like the Lesnar stuff wasn't always great, and I already talked about the Jey Uso tag team run, which wasn't that great, but he managed to be, even after the WrestleMania loss, one of the more interesting and exciting characters and more interesting baby faces on the show. So Cody continues to be a major star presence in WWE, despite a loss that I disagreed with and many others disagreed with. A horrible, horrible booking decision, but Cody managed to survive that and stay one of the most over presences on WWE programming, which says a lot about him. And my other option is LA Knight, who didn't get a whole heck of a lot, never won a belt in WWE, wasn't given a major push initially. He was left off the WrestleMania card inexplicably, even though the show was in LA. Seems weird to me, but okay. But he managed to take what little he was given, get over by talking, and became one of, if not the most over guy in WWE, and they finally started pushing him. And now, again, he lost to Roman in Saudi Arabia because he had to, and it kind of, halted his momentum a little bit, but he's still one of the bigger stars in WWE, and he did it with very, very little, and I think that speaks a lot to what I constantly talk about. It's like, look, it's not about star ratings, it's not about match quality or work rate or things like that. You got to connect with the audience, and he found a way to connect with the audience with the very little he was given, and became a kind of a lightning storm that took over the year and kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. And he's a guy that I said back in his Impact days, I was like, this Eli Drake guy's really good, and people kind of slept on him because, Impact, but I looked at him and was like, no, there's a talent there, and I hope he does well, and sure enough, he got given the baton in WWE, and he ran with it, and he did very well for himself, and I'm very proud of him. So, of those three, which one am I going to give Superstar of the Year to? I'm probably going to give it to LA Knight, just because, again, he was such a fresh face for the year and kind of helped define the year 2023. MJF is great. Cody's great. I sing their praises all the time, but I think LA Knight deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do this year. Again, despite being given very little. So Superstar of the Year, Male Superstar of the Year, LA Knight. That's my pick. Now, we have a couple more big pay-per-views coming up in January. We have the Royal Rumble, which I'll talk about at a later date. The anticipation for the Rumble is higher this year than most because of the CM Punk situation and whether or not him or Cody are going to win. The Women's Rumble, I wish they wouldn't do 2 Rumbles. This is one of the... I know, give the women a chance, but I'm like, look, can we just do 1 Rumble? And it's almost like the Survivor Series. Oh, we've got to do 2 War Games matches, one for the women and one for the men. And I'm like, excuse me, it's Survivor Series. Why don't you do 1 War Games match and 1 traditional Survivor Series match and just give 1 to the men and 1 to the women? I don't care which. Just make it happen. And doing 2 of the same gimmick match, I think, is stupid. You have them alternate years or something. I don't know. I don't care. I don't like it. I don't like doing the same gimmick match twice on one show. It drives me nuts. But, in any case, I think the Men's Rumble has a lot of intrigue to it this year because of all the excitement surrounding CM Punk and the potential of Cody Rhodes and whether or not he's even going to make it to WrestleMania, because now The Rock has thrown his hat into the Roman Reigns chase, and what's going to go on with that. And I guess I'll talk about Day 1 a little bit. I thought Day 1 overall was okay. Nothing really blew me away, except obviously The Rock coming out of that was a major headline. It's like, ooh, he's going to challenge Roman. Is that going to be the Mania match? Is that going to be the February match? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But I'll talk more about the Royal Rumble as we get closer to that event. We have couple of upcoming shows that I do want to talk about. One of them is happening tomorrow. Wrestle Kingdom 18 from New Japan, the annual event that I've watched every year since 9. I have not watched any New Japan in the last year, not since the last Wrestle Kingdom, because who's got the time? I've been very busy. It's been a wild year for me, so I have not watched any of New Japan. I have no idea what they're doing storyline wise. So this is I'm gonna watch it because I watch Wrestle Kingdom every year, but this is gonna be me almost coming into it as a newbie because I don't know what's going on. So I'm looking at the card right now. I've got the pre-show New Japan Rambo, which they do every year, and it's like, okay, fine. The winner will challenge the Provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2024 Championship at New Year's Dash. Okay. For the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles, we got Bullet Club War Dogs, Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney versus Catch 22, TJP, and Francesco Akira. For the New Japan World Television Championship, we've got Zack Sabre Jr. defending against Hiroshi Tanahashi, the new president of New Japan. We've got Yoda Tsuji versus Yuya Uemura. I don't think I've ever seen Yoda before, so that's a new one for me. Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya taking on the House of Torture, Evil and Ren Narita. Thank God Evil's not in the main event anymore. We've got that match. We've got Shingo Takagi taking on Tama Tonga for the Never Openweight Championship. Bishamon, Hiroki Goto, and Yoshihashi taking on the Guerrillas of Destiny. Let's see, Guerrillas of Destiny, Hikuleo and El Fantasmo in a winner-takes-all tag match for the IWGP Tag Team Championship and the Strong Openweight Tag Team Championship. They've got too many championships in New Japan. We've got Hiromu Takahashi taking on El Desperado for the Junior Heavyweight title. I feel like, I could be wrong, but wasn't that match a Junior Heavyweight title match a couple of Wrestle Kingdoms ago? I feel like I've seen that match like 10 times. Anyways, triple threat match for the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, and David Finlay. One of those things is not like the others. You've got a singles match, Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson. I don't care because I've already seen it. And for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, we've got Sonata taking on Tetsuya Naito. This is a very boring and uninteresting card, but I'm going to watch it. Who knows? It could surprise me. This is the least interested I've ever been in a Wrestle Kingdom card. But again, I haven't been following New Japan for the last year, so I'm coming into it fresh eyes, and we'll see how it all goes. But I'm not very hopeful. This is going to be a very exciting show. We'll see. We'll see. The next show I want to talk about is happening January 13th, so next weekend, and that is TNA Wrestling Hard to Kill, the return of the TNA branding for this little engine that could company that's been around for over 20 years and has looked death square in the face over and over again and manages to come out a survivor. I don't know how this company is still alive, but I keep pulling for them. It's like, they always manage to make it work for themselves no matter what kind of pitfalls and setbacks and roadblocks they face. And now we're getting back to the TNA branding because I guess somebody figured there's some kind of TNA nostalgia going on out there. But let's look at this card. Again, I have not watched much Impact since Bound for Glory, which I thought was an okay show, not great, but I haven't watched much of Impact because I figured anything leading up to TNA's rebranding is probably just a lame duck period at this point, so it's best to just tune in when it's TNA again and we'll see how it goes. So this show, again, I'm kind of coming into it with fresh eyes and expectations that there's going to be a fresh coat of paint. They're going to be able to do something cool with it. We shall see. But we've got 3 pre-show matches. Rich Swann versus Steve Maclin. Steve Maclin's on the pre-show. These are 2 former world champions, and they're on the pre-show. It's kind of weird to say that Steve Maclin and Rich Swann are former world champions for your company, but by Impact standards, they are. So, I don't know. Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers versus Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian in a tag match. That should be on the main card because those are like all TNA guys. But, okay. And Tommy Dreamer versus Crazy Steve in a no disqualifications match for the TNA Digital Media Championship. Then on the main card, we've got a 4-way match for the TNA World Tag Team Championship. ABC, Chris Bay and Ace Austin versus the Rascals, Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel. Versus Speedball Mountain, Mike Bailey and Trent Seven versus the grizzled young veterans Zach Gibson and James Drake. They've got a tag division. That was always one of TNA's strong points when I started watching back in 2004. So, all right, show off the tag division. Knockouts Ultimate X match to determine the #1 contender for the Knockouts World Championship. Is this the first time they've ever done a Knockouts Ultimate X match? I don't know how well this is going to work. Because I don't know how many women... I mean, ladder match is one thing, but I don't know how many of the women can make like the high wire act of the Ultimate X actually work. We'll see. I don't know, but the women aren't sold on being X-Division-y, cruiserweighty type of talents. Some could make it work. Like an Io Sky could make this work for sure, or maybe a Gail Kim and her Prime could make this work. But as is, I don't know if TNA has the full roster of talent to make an Ultimate X match work. But anyway, this match will include Giselle Shaw, Zaya Brookside, and another participant to be determined. So we'll wait on that one. Then we've got Dirty Dango versus PCO, probably my 2 favorite guys on the Impact roster right now. I love Dirty Dango's gimmick. I think he's hilarious. And PCO, I think, it's impressive how he's been able to reinvent himself for the modern age. Good for him. Then we got a 3-way match for the X Division Championship. Chris Sabin versus El Hijo del Vikingo versus Kushida. Then we've got, for the Knockouts World Championship, Trinity versus Jordan Grace. Looks like Trinity's probably going to lose because there's talk that Naomi's going to go back to WWE. I think she provided a little bit of a spark for TNA, but I also don't think she's the greatest talent in the world, so... she's probably going to be better off in WWE because in Impact, or TNA, it's like... once the spark wears off, she's going to probably get outshined by other people. So I think WWE is probably the better place for her. But, it was fun while it lasted, I guess. So I anticipate Jordan Grace will win the belt here. And then for the World Heavyweight Championship at TNA, we've got Alex Shelley versus Moose. Not the most dynamic main event, but okay. I would think that for TNA's first main event, like we're returning, TNA is back, they would deliver something a little bit more spicy. I don't know, like maybe a King of the Mountain match. That probably would have been the way to go. But you've got Eddie Edwards, Eric Young, Frankie Kazarian, Steve Macklin, kind of in pre-show matches. Why not just put them all in a King of the Mountain match? I'm not knocking Alex Shelley. I like him, and I'm not knocking Moose. Moose is a guy I've kind of always had a thing for. I think he's better than he gets credit for, but this match in particular, just putting them together, just doesn't sound that interesting to me. But we shall see. So yeah, that is that. I think that's all I have for you now. A couple of updates for the channel, some upcoming videos I plan on doing. I have a series of WrestleMania videos that are going to start popping up sometime in March, so be on the lookout for those. Godzilla-related videos. I plan on doing a Godzilla, an updated series ranking of all the movies from worst to best. But those will come out after I've had a chance to see Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire and see how that goes. And I hope to rewatch Godzilla -1 at some point, because I need to make a determination of which one I like more, -1 or Godzilla 1954. So be on the lookout for those, but those will come later in the year. And there's a couple other topical videos that I'm planning on doing. There was one I wanted to do talking about what makes a Royal Rumble match great, and talk about some of my favorite Rumbles of the past and what made those great, and recurring things that great Royal Rumbles do to make them special. So that one will be popping up pretty soon. I also want to do one talking about what makes a pay-per-view opener work. That's another one I plan on doing. You'll probably be getting that one after the Royal Rumble. So a lot of stuff coming for me. And also be on the lookout for more news. I might have another project dropping soon that I'll let everybody in on soon enough. But staying a little tight-lipped about it right now until things get a little bit more concrete. But until then, that is all I have for you now. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2024. And I will see you all later.